What's doing, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you for tuning in. If you've never been here, check out the many videos that I have posted. Hit the subscribe button and welcome. Everybody else, welcome back. For those of you that have never been here before, I survived 17 years straight in the New York prison system. And today we're going to talk about the mentally ill inside of the prison system. Why they're there, how many are there, the treatment that's available for them, and I should say the lack of treatment that is available for them. But more so, we're going to also discuss why it happened, why the prisons are filled with people with mental illness, why there is a mental health crisis inside of the New York State prison system and in many prison systems throughout the United States of America. Their approach is not one that is beneficial for people in need. It places many people in danger. So let's get right into it. Right now, approximately, you can never give an exact number. They say there are about 9,000 prisoners in the New York State system that suffer from mental illness. Over 9,000 prisoners that are on mental health medications inside of the New York State prison system. What happened is in the 1980s, they started closing a lot of the mental health hospitals inside of New York State. um, they started shutting down mental health treatment centers, mental health facilities, mental health programs inside of New York City and New York State itself. And the main reason they did this is, of course, the reason that comes up all the time: money. They wanted to save money, and trying to save money by stopping the treatment for people who suffer from mental illness is a pretty cruel reality. When this country can send $175 million to teach people in Uganda how to use condoms, when they can send $75 million to Zimbabwe for a coloring book to teach people about safe sex, that list goes on so extensively. When they can do a survey and take $400 million to do a survey on, the most ridiculous thing, when people are really filling their pockets with the money, you should really concentrate on keeping society safe and more mentally fit. But they don't do that. A lot of people wanted to pocket the money and stop spending the money, so they close these hospitals. And what happens is the mentally ill end up on the streets, and you have a large population of homeless people who are suffering from mental illness, and they really have nowhere to turn. There are very limited shelters for these individuals. The shelters do not provide. Most shelters are not a safe place. Most shelters are more dangerous than being on Rikers Island. Okay, because the people in the shelter don't have correctional officers trying to keep them in line. So the shelters are filled with sex abuse. The shelters are filled with drugs. There are stabbings. There are shootings. There's alcoholism, there's rampant drug use. Shelters are very dangerous inside of New York, the majority of them. And it's very hard to get a bed inside of a shelter to begin with. And so what happens is, because they closed the hospitals, there's still some hospitals that exist. There may be, speculating, 10, 15 hospitals when there used to be 200 hospitals to help the mentally ill. And over the past 30 years, that has really dissipated. Okay. And so they end up on the street, they end up committing crimes, and they end up in the prison system. And when they end up in the prison system, so the justification, we'll get back to that in a minute. The justification of New York State says, we closed the mental health hospitals because we have instilled mental health units inside of the prison system. We have special units inside of the prison system that can supply the therapeutic environment for those people that are in need. We can issue the medications, we can give them therapy, but this is another one of the Department of Corrections' big farces. Okay? I've been there, I lived in there. This is not speculation. I'll tell you what happens. The majority, large, overwhelming majority of mentally ill end up in the regular prison population. That's where they end up. If they are so out of their minds, completely gone, where they cannot function at all, then they might put them in a special housing unit for the mentally ill inside of a prison. They have certain prisons that have those units. Not all of them do. But you can have a guy who doesn't shower, who wears the same clothes for months, he smells, he is picking up cigarette butts off the floor, he's talking to himself, he is suffering from schizophrenia, he's hearing voices, right? He's committing self harm. He's hurting himself. He's attacking other prisoners. And this individual that I just explained is still in the prison population, the general population. There are thousands of them, not hundreds, thousands of them in the population. And so what happens is this endangers the men, the regular prisoners, the quote unquote normal prisoners in the general population. This endangers them. And it endangers them in which is very unfair for a guy who's in prison just trying to do his time and trying to get home and maybe following all the rules and regulations of the prison. And all of a sudden there's a mentally ill guy there jeopardizing everything, jeopardizing his life, jeopardizing his freedom. And what so happens is the mentally ill person may strike out against a normal person in the general population. And then this person in the general population ends up with more time. Right? He ends up with going to solitary confinement. He may end up with a new criminal charge. And then they take him to court and he has to serve many more years in prison because they say he was involved in an assault. Right? So keeping the mentally ill in the general population endangers the people in the general population, but it also endangers the mentally ill individual themselves because now they are subject to all of these guys in population who may want to A, take advantage of them, may want to B, rob them, assault them, abuse them, extort them. And what are they going to do about it? They're suffering from mental illness. There's a tremendous amount of guys in there that are schizophrenic, that are bipolar, that are manic. It's a very dangerous situation. And the prison will tell you that they have a system that adheres to taking care of these people. But it's bullshit. It's bullshit, right? They just toss them into the population. And if they become so dysfunctional and become so disruptive that the population can't, then they'll just stick them in a ward somewhere where they're not getting the proper treatment either. They just feed them their medication. Here's your medication. Here's your medication, right? And so two things, right? That's the way that's working, right? And they're not getting the help that they need. They're not getting it, right? And so the bail reform laws take you to a little direction, a different direction, deviate for a minute. The bail reform laws are wreaking havoc on this entire system because what happens is because people are getting arrested and then putting right back out on the street, they can get arrested. A mentally ill person can get arrested. He goes to the police station. They may write him a desk appearance ticket and then release him back to the street with a court date, and then he goes out and commits another crime. The majority of the people that have pushed people in front of subway cars recently in New York City are people that have 25, 30, 40 arrests as a homeless mentally ill person. And then finally they kill someone because the system is not addressing the problem. And it is the responsibility of the system to address the problem. These are citizens of New York State, citizens of the United States, and whether they be citizens that are considered at the bottom of the totem pole, right? You judge a society by the way it treats the less fortunate. You see, a good society, a caring society, will treat the less fortunate, will treat even its prisoners with care. And that will show you the structure of a whole society. If you treat the less fortunate with disdain, And with animosity, the cycle of reoffending just continues. And so closing these mental institutions and closing these hospitals has only wreaked havoc on the state itself. Right? And as I was saying, the bail reform laws just put them back on the street to commit more crime. And then when they go into the system, they're not getting any more treatment. And then when they get released, another problem. And you say, well, most of the homeless and most of the people that are on the street that are mentally ill, they may be drug addicts or alcoholics. You'd be surprised that it does play a part in a large role of them, but you'd be surprised that a lot of them just suffer from mental illness, right? They turn, and some of them turn to addiction. A lot of them turn to addiction to deal with the sobering reality that they have nowhere to turn, that the system has failed them. Right? And so, yes, the prison system in New York, which has over 45 prisons, right, has a large number in mentally. When I was in prison, I was exposed to them. There was some, for the lack of a better term, real crazy people in and there's nowhere to seek help. There's really nowhere to seek help. As I said, you can write a therapist and tell them you need therapy, and you'll go see some state therapist. You can write a therapist. I had this happen to me personally. I needed to talk to someone. I was stressed out. I was having a hard time. I was getting ready for release. So I write the mental health department in the prison, said, listen, I need to talk to someone. Can someone call me down? 10 after writing 3 letters, after the third letter, 10 days later, they called me. And when I finally go down there, the guy that I remember his name was Mr. Glenn, fat Mr. Glenn. He looked at me like, you're wasting my time. Don't you realize I don't want to talk to anyone? That's how he was looking at me. Like, how could I help you, man? What do you want? And I'm like, what do I want? What I want is some help, man. I need some help. Right? And if you're reaching out for help in the prison system, you're reaching out to the wrong people. So the prison is filled with mentally ill. It's very dangerous. They need to open the hospitals again, and they need to stop just medicating these guys in prison. They're walking around picking up cigarette butts. They're walking around picking up stuff out of the garbage, like the homeless in New York City, and they need help. So I wanted to give you a little idea about the system, about the mental health crisis in New York State. How do we rectify it? I'll end with that. How do we rectify it? We got to open hospitals again. We got to open some hospitals for these people, and we got to give them some real treatment. That's what we have to do. What other answer is there? You really endanger society. You endanger the individual, you endanger the citizens, and you endanger society by not taking care of this. People are scared right now to go into the subway system in New York City because they're afraid they're going to be robbed, raped, assaulted, pushed in front of a subway car. The list goes on. New York State needs to step it up, and they need to step it up around the country. Some people need help. I'll talk to you guys later.